Okay, so now I'm going to start my lecture. So basically, in today's lecture, I'll be giving. I'm sharing my screen now. Is my screen visible to you, guys? So I'll if I will not be visible, or if the screen would not be visible to you, or I would not be audible to you, or the video or audios that I'll be sharing will not be audible to you, so please do tell, because I'm going to share my screen, so it will not be visible to me. Okay, so I'm going to start it now. So today we will be talking about natural resource management and sustainable development. Is it clearly visible to everyone? Is it?
Yes, ma'am, it is
Okay.
visible.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the second lecture of this second theme of this online certificate course on ecology, environment, and sustainability. So now we will also be in the further lectures. We will be having two more lectures under this theme, and we'll be covering about the sustainable energy and forest resources in particular. So this today's lecture will is more or less like an introduction to everyone of what natural resources are, how should be its management, and how is it related, or what is sustainable development. Okay, so these are the this will be the agenda of today's class lecture. I'll be talking about briefly about the natural resources and the classification, of course, and how can we do the effective natural management, and what is the sustainable development. So these will be the topics I'll be covering in today's lecture. So first of all, let's have a look about what natural resources are. So first of all, as we know, all of us know, what are natural resources? The resources that are provided to us by nature, right? Like anything which we use, and we require natural resources in our day-to-day life. We will not be able to live without them, like air, water, forest, wildlife, minerals, fossil fuels, or you can say that any part of natural material that a man can utilize to promote the welfare, right? That can be regarded as the natural resource. So when we talk about natural resources, when broadly we talk about them, so the natural resources are classified basically into two parts: renewable and non-renewable resources. So what are the renewable resources? Which we think are unlimited in nature, right, unlimited in nature, which we can use over and over again. So how can we use them over and over again? Because they have a very fast recharge time, right? Very fastly they get recharged, so we can use them or utilize them over and over again, right? Similarly, the non-renewable resources are the resources which have a very long regeneration time. So basically, or we can say that they take hundreds and thousands of years to regenerate. So obviously, or we can say that in a one basic differentiation, you can say that the resources which can regenerate in human time scale are renewable, and which cannot regenerate in human time scale are non-renewable resources. So these are the few examples. Renewable resources are the water, air, forest, wildlife, right? These are the renewable resources. And when we talk about the non-renewable resources, these are non-renewable resources are broadly the fossil fuels like coal, petroleum, and natural gas, as well as the minerals. Minerals are also a very important factor and or we can say that we require mineral in day-to-day life. Everywhere we require minerals. Like every natural resource is something we require in our day-to-day life. Now I would be talking about in so now topic wise, I'll also be telling you about the importance of all these natural resources. So firstly, I would be covering the renewable natural resources, right? The renewable resources that we talk about. So the first thing that I'll be covering is the forests. Yes, everyone knows that forests are important. Forests play a very important role, but sometimes we know that, but we neglect it, right? But let me tell you frankly, these are the lifesavers. So the forests are something on which our life depends majorly on. Like they provide us the ecosystem services that they provide us, they are very important for us. So what are the ecosystem services basically? Let me tell you first of all that the ecosystem services are the services which are provided by the ecosystem, right? And what ecosystem is? What is an ecosystem? It is a system where biotic and abiotic components of the nature interact with each other, right? Or a system, or we can say that it is the smallest unit of landscape. You can say that ecosystem can be very small. It can be as small as a raindrop, or it can be as large as a whole landscape or a whole desert or a whole forest. So basically there are so many the services which are provided by the natural resources or ecosystems, they are known as the ecosystem services. So when we broadly talk about ecosystem services, so there are major divisions for that. So first of all, firstly, I will cover all the natural resources. Then broadly together, I'll talk about the various ecosystem services that they provide. Okay. So let's first talk about the forest. So forest, when we talk about the forests, so first of all of us know that the products or the productive value of the forest, the first thing the forest provide us is the products for the raw materials for the industries, right? Like it provides timber, wood, it provides fuel for us, medicines, fodder, everything that they provides the productive products that we get from the forest, right? Then this is everything, these are the things that everyone know. They provide us medicines, they provide us fodder, timber, everything for which we use for various purposes. But there are also other major functions which are being played by the forests. So when we are talking about the forests, so basically forests are the home to wildlife as well. So forests in general, and forest would also be having the trees as well as flora as well as the fauna in it, with it. So here we'll be talking about the wildlife is also a component of the natural resource. So we'll be talking about the role that is played by it later. So here we are basically talking about the forest in general. So first thing that forests do, the trees that do is first they provide the oxygen to us, right? We cannot survive without the oxygen, right? It helps us in maintaining the balance between the oxygen and the carbon dioxide, right? Do you know, guys, the forests are a very big sink of carbon dioxide. The carbon sequestration, they do carbon sequestration. So first of all, the biggest sink of carbon dioxide when we talk is the oceans. After oceans, the biggest sink of carbon dioxide is the forests. And and there is one more thing, the oxygen that we have, the biggest, so after the oxygen, after the oceans, the oxygen that we are getting is from the forests. The biggest oxygen givers for us are, do you know the lungs of the earth? What is known as the lungs of the earth? The Amazon rainforest, the biggest rainforest that is there on earth. The Amazon rainforest are also known as the lungs of the earth, right? Because half, more than one fourth of the around half of the oxygen that is required by us is provided by the Amazon rainforest, right? After that, it also helps us in maintaining the hydrological cycle, right? So basically, it is said that, I'll give you one example that then you will understand it better. It is said that above the Amazon rainforest, it is always misty. So it is said that the Amazon rainforest is capable of producing the rainfall, whatever is its requirement of water. It can produce the rainfall through the water through the rainfall for its own self. It is capable of doing that, right? Because why? Because plants do transpiration that helps in the formation of clouds, and that leads to the rainfall. So basically it helps in forest, helps in maintaining the hydrological cycle. Then they also helps in maintaining the climate, controlling the climate change. Why? Because they are a very big sink of carbon dioxide. So if they are a very big sink of carbon dioxide, so what will they do? Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas, right? So what carbon dioxide does, it actually, greenhouse gases are the gases which prevents the heat of the earth to escape, right? It traps the heat of the earth and it prevents it. So I will not be going into details because you will be studying the climate change, and all of you must be knowing what greenhouse effect is and what climate change is in our in our subsequent themes. So I'll not be going in detail, but all of us know that it is a greenhouse gas and it traps the heat. So that is how, if carbon dioxide, forests help in absorbing the carbon dioxide, in a way it is helping balancing or reducing the amount of carbon dioxide in nature. So I also want to tell you one additional information here that many of you must not be aware about. Why are we worried about carbon dioxide? See, so the carbon dioxide concentration currently is around 410 parts per million, ppm. It is said that. So it is said that when with increase in 1 ppm, which is the parts per million concentration of carbon dioxide, there is an increase of 2.5 gigatons of carbon in the environment. So guys, so if 1 ppm of carbon, can you I'll stop here. I think someone is trying to admit. I'll just stop here. Just wait. I was trying to enter the class. I'm not. Hello? Is my voice breaking?
No, ma'am.
It's fine. So whenever it's, it's not audible or something, you can unmute. I will not be able to see the chat box because I'm sharing my screen. So kindly unmute yourself and speak it out. Okay? Okay. So, right. So that is why that is why they say plant more and more trees. That's why we should prevent the forest. That's why we should not cut the forest. The other roles that forests play is the nutrient cycling. Forests also help in the cycling of the nutrients, right? The other thing, we know that it is a wildlife habitat. Obviously, if there would be no forest, there would be no wildlife. So the term biodiversity is itself means the variability present in all life forms, be it plants, avifauna, flora, fauna, avifauna, everything, life on air, water, land, everywhere. So basically, it is home to it, and it is one of the major factors to prevent life. So because everything is dependent on each other, there is an ecosystem. So if ecosystem is a multi-storied building, and you know that if any of the story of that multi-story building will collapse, the whole system, the whole building will come down itself. So that is why everything, and the role of everything is very important. The other thing is, forest also helps in maintaining, in preventing the soil erosion. Yes, that is something that many of you will not be aware about, but they also play a very important role in not only preventing the soil erosion, but also in controlling the moisture level of, or we can say that moisture level of the soil, or we can say that prevent desertification. So now, what is soil erosion? Soil erosion is the removal of topmost layer of the soil. So why are we worried about if the topmost layer of the soil will be removed? The topmost layer of the soil is the new soil, and that new soil is rich in nutrients. Because how does soil form? Soil is formed by breaking down of rocks. And how are rocks formed? Rocks have minerals in them. And when minerals will break down, they become the source of the nutrients for the plants which grow. So, right. So the topmost layer of the soil is healthy soil. Why do we take nutrients? Like हमारी body में अगर nutrients की कमी हो जाती है, so what do? If we do not get enough nutrients, because every life form needs nutrients for its growth. Similarly, we need. So if we're not able to get nutrients from our diet, what do? We take extra supplements, right? Calcium, iron, the supplements that we take, because they are required for our development of proper growth. Similarly, plants also need nutrients. You must be aware of it. Nutrients की जरूरत होती है उनको growth के लिए. So those nutrients they take from soil, and as well as water. So basically, water and nutrients are taken by the plants through the soil. So those the new soil is rich in nutrients. Now what will happen, guys, if that new soil will remove from there? What will happen? That the old soil will be already overused. The nutrients, there would be lack of nutrients, so that's why that will not support the vegetation, right? So the plants help in preventing the soil erosion. How? It holds the soil. Their roots hold the soil. They prevent soil erosion, and not only soil erosion, in case of mountains, right? If excessive soil erosion would be there in the mountains, that leads to landslides also. So in a way, it prevents if it is preventing soil erosion, and in the mountains, it is preventing this landslides. Nowadays, you would have seen in few, like I think in the last 3, 4, 5 years, you would have seen increased news of landslides during the rainy season. So because excessive deforestation that is happening in the name of development, right, in the hills, actually causing it. So basically, forests actually prevent it. The other thing is they also controls flood, right? The intensity, speed of the water is controlled by they act as a barrier, and they reduce, right? They control the floods. So there are major roles, or major roles that are being played by the forest. The other thing is social and cultural benefits. Like, guys, all of you would have heard about the biodiversity values. So there is one social value of the natural resources. You can say that when we talk about, in the previous lecture, Dr. Rajendra Singh talked about Sanatan. He used the term Sanatan, right? So basically, here I would also, and he also talked about the traditional way of living, Indian living, right? So all of you would have seen, if those of you who follow Hindu religion, all of you would have seen heard the concept of back home, the concept of Kul Devi and Devta. So what are these Kul Devi and Devtas are, right? So Kul Devi Devta aapko kya milega? Basically, it will be a community forest. There would be a species of an animal or a plant which is being worshipped as Kul Devi or Devta. They're not the traditional gods which are being worshipped. So basically, and so that is why, so Kul Devi and Devta would be an animal or a plant species which is actually found in that native, in your native village or your city, small city. So the concept is there. Why? That is how we have, because in our traditional way, or our ancestors have learned to live with the nature. So they knew the values of the natural resources that are being found there. So they knew that's why they started worshipping it, right? So worship se kya hoga? If you will worship something, you will not cut it. You will value it. So these are the basically values which in our day-to-day life we are dependent on the forest for us. So now, what are the various threats that forests see? So the biggest threat for the forest is the deforestation, of course, you know. So the what are the reasons for the deforestation? So the deforestation, the biggest reason for the deforestation are, first of all, I would say developmental projects, right? I will talk it about it later. And shifting cultivation is also. What is shifting cultivation now? Shifting cultivation is shifting of the land use for the purpose of cultivation. All of you would have heard about the jhum cultivation. Have you heard about the jhum cultivation? Or slash and burn, right? So slash and burn is, it is majorly followed in northeast, some parts of Jharkhand, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, right? So basically clearing of forest for the purpose of agriculture, cultivation. And basically we are forced to do it. Why? Because of the increasing population, you know, we have to, you know, meet up our growing demand, food demand. So that is why there is a lot of pressure on the forests. Forests are being cleared for the purpose of cultivation. Then overgrazing. Guys, overgrazing is a very big problem. It is also a very big cause of desertification. It also becomes overgrazing. Se kya hota hai? You would say how overgrazing would affect a forest. So just think, a tree does not born as a tree. There's a seed, then a sapling comes out of it. Then it becomes a small plantlets and plant, and it keeps on growing. So if there would be excessive herbivores or the grazing of cattle by the people who are living near the forest, if it would be there, they will not allow the survival of the forest. They will overgraze it, or they will expose the land. There will be more soil erosion, right? Or there will be excessive evaporation, because plants also help in retaining the moisture. So that is also excessive overgrazing is also a very big reason for the destruction of forests. Then we have developmental projects. So when we talk about developmental projects here, developmental projects means one of them is mining. Recently, you would have heard the government gave a nod to clear a forest patch for the purpose of mining. There was a lot of cry about it. So why? If a government has got to know that even if it is a rainforest, it's a lush green forest, and there is some mineral resource that we have there, they will not think a second time. And the nod, as we have seen, the nod is being given for the clearance of forest for the mining purpose. Then we have roads. Roads formation, and the other developmental project that affects the forest a lot is the dams, formation of dams, right? So roads kya karte hain? Roads or railways, if they are going through a national park or a forest, so what they do, they actually do habitat fragmentation. So basically the habitat, all of you know, habitat means address of an organism. What would you say? Address, an organism, where an organism live. So when we are talking about the forest, the wildlife, so basically the habitat for the wildlife gets fragmented, right? When it gets fragmented, so what, you know, that is also a very big problem, because there are a few long range animals which need huge area to move from one place to another. So these developmental projects also affect the forest, a biggest threat to the forest. Then we have invasive species. Invasive species also help in increasing the destruction of the forest. Like, all, there is an invasive species, Prosopis juliflora, right? Prosopis juliflora. So there are invasive species of animals as well, invasive species of plants as well. So invasive species, one such invasive species, Prosopis juliflora. guys, इसको हम विलायती कीकर भी कहते हैं दिल्ली में जैसे. So there are various species of plants which actually just keep on growing themselves. Like, there are various species of plants, like in case of Prosopis, they show a property which is known as allelopathy. Okay, so what this allelopathy does, allelopathy means they release some chemicals. In simple terms, I'm telling you, in layman's language, they release some chemicals in the soil which actually make the soil unfit for the growth of other plants. So what will happen? So generally you will see, so जो विलायती कीकर या Prosopis के jungles होते हैं, you will not find other things there. Like now it has be adapted, like various researches are there. We'll not talk about that. A few changes are there, but basically they spread like anything, and they do not allow any other plant to grow, right? So that is also a very big threat. Then fires, forest fires. Forest fire is something, guys, all of you would have heard about it in recent past. So forest fires, you can say they are natural in a way, but they are in few years, in the last 2 years, don't go like long back. In the last few years, we have seen huge or the biggest forest fires in the world's history, like Amazon rainforest fire. So after that, we saw Australian bushfire. Usse pehle California mein there was very bad forest fire. So guys, it is being said, and they are getting huge and huge every day. And all of you must be knowing that the major reason for, so here it is man-made and it was both natural, but the natural causes of the forest fires are also being aggravated by the anthropogenic reasons or the humans, like Amazon rainforest. All of you knew that later on, initially it was not known, the exact reason was not known. When the president was hugely criticized by the environmentalists, then he accepted, yes, it was because of slash and burn, right? Slash and burn, it was started for clearance of a patch of forest that aggravated. Similarly, in the Australian bushfire, basically it was, all of you would have seen, functionally extinct होने के वर्ष पे आ गया koala, like huge population, a lot of animals died. It was so sad to see the pictures, everyone has seen it. So the reason was extreme heat wave in Australia, and heat wave and high winds. And usne, not only, guys, it affected the wildlife which was living on land, but you would have seen the ash that, the went onto the lakes and rivers, with the runoff. That also killed a lot of fishes, or that also affected aquatic diversity as well. So these are the major reasons which actually affect the forests. Then why do we conserve, or how can we conserve them? So basically, for the forest conservation, obviously afforestation should be done. So how can we do it? Afforestation can be in India also. There have been a lot of now efforts that are being taken, based many social forestry programs are being adopted, and which like One Mahotsav and joint forest movement, right? Public participation is also what very much required. So guys, when we talk about the natural resources like it, especially in case of a forest, so the public participation, which is known as stakeholders. So who are the stakeholders of a natural resource in case of forest? That is also very important. Here the stakeholders are the people who are living, right? Without their effort, the conservation of the natural resources cannot be done. So when we talk about the forest, the biggest stakeholders here are the people who are living in and around the forests, and the government, right? Because the national parks, biosphere reserves, and wildlife sanctuaries, these are the government-owned places. So they play a major role here in the conservation. Then initially, agar hum kahaniyan dekhein, historically also, as I've already told, the natural resources are a very important part of our life. So अगर हम historically भी देखें तो 1700s में भी saw विश्नोई आंदोलन, right, where Amrita Devi sacrificed her life in protection of forest by simply embracing. They just wanted to protect the khejri tree, right, for the protection of khejri tree. Then we saw in 1970s the modern Chipko movement, जिसे आप बोल सकते हो, right? So basically this Chipko movement took the idea from the inspiration from the Bishnoi Andolan, that was a Ahinsavadi movement to silently embrace the trees to stop their killings, right? So protection, so here people participation comes into place. Until unless the stakeholders will not take its responsibility, we will not be able to do the effective management of the natural resource. So these are the various ways how can we protect the forests. Coming to the wildlife. As we know that wildlife, forests are the home to wildlife. So if we have to protect wildlife, first thing we have to do is the protection of the forests, right? So why is wildlife important to us, right? Wildlife basically, as I have already told you, there's an ecosystem and everything is dependent on its survival on the other. So basically, wildlife, that is how helps in preserving or maintaining the biodiversity. It also helps in maintaining the food chains and the food web. And we are also dependent on various products on the wildlife. And for our survival also we are dependent on it, because we are also a part of the same ecosystem of which the wildlife is. So when we talk about the biggest threat to wildlife, so that becomes the poaching, right? Poaching is the biggest threat. As you can say that animals are being killed for their skin, elephant for their tusks. Though there are stringent rules, but still the poaching is there. Then we have pollution. Pollution is also one of the biggest reason. Habitat fragmentation is also one of the very big reason for the loss of wildlife in particular. Habitat fragmentation, what I talk about, the deforestation or the breaking of forest into patches. Similarly, we have invasive species. Invasive species also affect the wildlife very much. So invasive species, as we have already talked, I will tell one example of animals. In case of, for example, as I have told you, one example of the invasive species was the Prosopis juliflora. Then when we talk about they also basically, invasive species can lead to the extinction of the native flora or fauna, right? So similarly, I'll give you one such example is, there is a second largest freshwater lake. Second largest freshwater lake in the world is Lake Victoria. It's in Africa. It's so huge that it covers 3 countries, right? So basically, that part of Africa is there. A lot of poverty is also there. So along the banks of Lake Victoria, there used a lot of fishermen used to live. So for their survival, they used to catch the fishes and they used to sell it. So there was a fish which was there in the, you know, Lake Victoria. Its name is cichlid fish. Usko we write is CH. So that cichlid fish is very small. It's not very large fish. So that was actually endemic to that lake. Endemic means, guys, endemic term means when a species is restricted to a particular place. So that cichlid fish was restricted to that. So वहाँ पे what happened? So there, क्योंकि वो बहुत छोटी थी in size, so they used to had to catch a lot of fishes. So they thought in the river Nile, which is also in Africa. So basically, so there was in river Nile, there was a fish, and its name is Nile perch. Nile perch is from 3 foot to 6 feet long. It may vary. So that's why for that economic point of view, they introduced Nile perch in the Lake Victoria. So now when that fish was so huge in size, so obviously it would you require more food to it. So जब वो यहाँ पे introduce हो गई, that fish started, within a year, more than 1/4 population of that cichlid fish vanished from here. So actually that finally led to the extinction of that fish. So such cases occur. So basically Nile perch was so huge. Now because it led to the extinction of the cichlid fish. So such instances happen in case of invasive species, right? Then climate change. Yes, climate change, as we have already seen, the fires, the wildfires that we have talked about, the wildfires, because of the global warming, the temperature are increasing. The more extremes of temperatures are being seen everywhere. Excessive of heat, excessive temperature, that is also leading to the, loss in the biodiversity, or we can say that the wildlife here. Okay. Now let's see how can wildlife be conserved. So basically, of course, by banning the poaching. So basically we have in India, when we talk about India, we have various acts, various policies in place. The Wildlife Protection Act in 1972 came into place, and the poaching is being banned since then. And the concept of national parks, biosphere reserve, the protected areas also introduced since then. But still, animals are being poached for their skin, for their tusks, for their teeth, for their nails, right? For their horns. So that should be done. Then so first of all, the basic thing that we can do for the conservation of a natural for a natural resource or wildlife is by preserving their natural habitat or by increasing the number of the protected areas. So protected areas are something where the rules are very stringent, and until and unless people are not afraid of the strict punishment, they will not stop themselves. So basically, for when we talk about the conservation, people, when we talk about the conservation, the one more thing is that so wildlife conservation or wildlife in forest goes hand in hand. If you have to conserve one thing, you would be so surprised to know. I just want to show you a short a video, 5 minute 4 minute video that will show you how wildlife and biodiversity, basically wildlife and the forests are totally dependent on each other and how it's survival. So I'll just show you not to make it monotonous, I'll just show you a video to keep you interested in here. Is my screen visible now? No? I'll show you a video now. Okay, so basically, this video is a case study. I'll just start it. So basically, यहाँ पे क्या हुआ? To conserve the forest, basically, you would see the introduction. How few species there is a term which is used in biodiversity. Some of you must be knowing it. Some of you might not know it. The keystone species. There are a few species, basically a top carnivore or trees like ficus family trees. They are known as keystone species, which may not be very high in number, but they play a very dominant role in maintaining the ecosystem. So how introduction of a keystone species led to total survival of the Yellowstone National Park? That's a case study I just want to show you. Just have a look. Is it visible?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Yes.
Okay. And please tell me the volume also. Is it audible?
Yes,
Yes,
One of the most exciting scientific findings of the past half-century has been the discovery of widespread trophic cascades. A trophic cascade is an ecological process which starts at the top of the food chain and tumbles all the way down to the bottom. And the classic example is what happened in the Yellowstone National Park in the United States when wolves were reintroduced in 1995. Now, we all know that wolves kill various species of animals, but perhaps we're slightly less aware that they give life to many others. Before the wolves turned up, they'd been absent for 70 years. The numbers of deer, because there was nothing to hunt them, had built up and built up in the Yellowstone Park, and despite efforts by humans to control them, they'd managed to reduce much of the vegetation there to almost nothing. They'd just grazed it away. But as soon as the wolves arrived, even though they were few in number, they started to have the most remarkable effects. First, of course, they killed some of the deer, but that wasn't the major thing. Much more significantly, they radically changed the behavior of the deer. The deer started avoiding certain parts of the park, the places where they could be trapped most easily, particularly the valleys and the gorges. And immediately those places started to regenerate. In some areas, the height of the trees quintupled in just 6 years. Bare valley sides quickly became forests of aspen and willow and cottonwood. As soon as that happened, the birds started moving in. the number of songbirds, of migratory birds, started to increase greatly. The number of beavers started to increase because beavers like to eat the trees. And beavers, like wolves, are ecosystem engineers. They create niches for other species. And the dams they built in the rivers provided habitats for otters and muskrats and ducks and fish and reptiles and amphibians. The wolves killed coyotes, and as a result of that, the number of rabbits and mice began to rise, which meant more hawks, more weasels, more foxes, more badgers. Ravens and bald eagles came down to feed on the carrion that the wolves had left. Bears fed on it too, and their population began to rise as well, partly also because there were more berries growing on the regenerating shrubs. And the bears reinforced the impact of the wolves by killing some of the calves on the deer. But here's where it gets really interesting. The wolves changed the behavior of the rivers. They began to meander less. There was less erosion. The channels narrowed. More pools formed. More riffle sections, all of which were great for wildlife habitats. The rivers changed in response to the wolves. And the reason was that the regenerating forests stabilized the banks so that they collapsed less often, so that the rivers became more fixed in their course. Similarly, by driving the deer out of some places and the vegetation recovering on the valley sides, there was less soil erosion because the vegetation stabilized that as well. So the wolves, small in number, transformed not just the ecosystem of the Yellowstone National Park, this huge area of land, but also its physical geography.
So have you seen how like a species can affect not only the species composition of an area, the plant diversity, but as well as the physical geography of that area? So that is what, that is why we say save everything, save forests, save wildlife. So now when we talk about the natural resources, the other very important resource that we have is water, right? We all know that. So it's like how it's a scarce resource. So water everywhere. You can say that water everywhere, but nowhere to drink. So basically, why? As you know that Earth is known as blue planet. 3/4 of it, the Earth is covered with water. But out of that, 3/4 of the water, 97%, or if you take whole of amount of water that is present on the Earth, the 100 out of 100%, 97% is the saline water, and only 3% is the fresh. And out of that fresh water, the most readily available source of water is what? Where we can just go and take water is the rivers. And rivers are the source of 0.001% fresh water amount on the Earth. The major chunk of fresh water is still there in ice caps, right? Ice caps or ice sheets which are there. So basically water is a scarce resource, and it is becoming more scarce because of the increasing pollution level that the increasing pollution and over exploitation of it. So basically that is why there is no life without water. So that is why we have to conserve water. So various conservation methods that are being used for the conservation of water. First one is the judicious use of water. Don't waste water, right? Everyone, it is said that. The other thing is conservation of water in through various ways, like storage of water, like through rainwater harvesting and through dams. These are the two major ways how the water is being conserved. So rainwater harvesting or the conservation of water has been talked a lot in the previous lecture by Dr. Rajiv Singh. So I will not be discussing. You know how rainwater harvesting is conservation of rainwater. So don't allow the water to run off. So there are basically two types majorly. एक होता है rooftop conservation, हार्वेस्टिंग ऑफ द वाटर, एक होता है सरफेस रन ऑफ. सो बेसिकली जो सरफेस रन ऑफ पे है उसको कलेक्ट करना इन द स्टोरेज टैंक्स, राइट. एंड देन rooftop is the water which is the runoff from the rooftop to collect it. So basically that is the process of rainwater harvesting. So I'll not go into detail, you have already studied that. The other thing, major thing that is being used for the conservation of water, because guys, as I have told you, only the least amount of fresh water source that we have is the rivers, and rivers are the most readily available water. As you can say, all the major civilizations, right, human civilizations were around the banks of rivers. The first one was the Mesopotamian. It was on Tigris and Euphrates. And then when you come to Indus Valley civilization, Indus Valley civilization itself, Mohenjo-daro and Harappa, it was around the Indus River. So why? Because water is the primary requisite for the survival, and that made agriculture possible. So modern civilizations were around the rivers. So why dams were being made? So dams were being made for actually regulating the flow of the water, because rivers are they flow continuously and they finally end up into the oceans, which is the saline water. So basically to regulate its flow, or for definitely for energy production as well. So these are the processes, or to regulate the flow of water, basically dams were being used. But now it is said that human need nahi, human greed ho gayi. So that's why, but we are increasing the over exploitation of the water. So because of that, so more and more dams are being made on the rivers. And you can see the example of the Yamuna river. Like, the river is dead by the time it reaches Delhi. There is no life in it. And during this time of pandemic, all of you would have seen how the quality of water increased even in the Yamuna river. And because everything, every industry, everywhere there was lockdown. So now so because of all these over exploitation, we have the water is continuously becoming more and more scarce resource, and that actually is leading to the conflicts over river water. So when we talk about the major conflicts over the river water, why? Because there is pollution. The reasons is the pollution for the conflicts of river water. The other thing, it is already scarce. Third one is actually, when we talk about international maybe yahi ho jata hai. So basically rivers flow from one point to another. So the point of origin of a river, you can say, or the upper part of the river, is known as the upstream, and the point from where it meets, or the ocean, you can say, that is the downstream. So wherever is the source of the water, that country tries to own that water. And because you cannot stop the flow of water, so they try to make more and more dams. That is also one of the reasons more and more dams are being built over the rivers, because in a way to regulate the flow of water. So basically, when we will talk about that major conflicts in context with India, one is the Indus Water Treaty, which is one of the major like aap sunte honge kabhi bhi, whenever there is war whenever there is tension with the Pakistan. So like in last year also, there was a lot of India was saying we will stop Indus water. Then China said you cannot stop Indus water, we will stop yours, because the source of the Indus is Tibet. And so basically it originates from Tibet, then it enters India, and then it goes into Pakistan. So basically that is how it's water being shared by 3 countries, right? So because of that, Indus Water Treaty was held between India and Pakistan. So here there were 6 major rivers in that Punjab region. So their water was divided. So in Satluj, Ravi, Vyas, the water was diverted towards India. It was said that India can make major developmental projects like dams. Major dams can made on Satluj, Ravi, Vyas, and Indus, Jhelum, or Chenab were given to the Pakistan. So basically, India cannot make any over major developmental project, or cannot stop its flow majorly, right? So that was one international treaty that we had. And then when we talk about the interstate, the biggest interstate, all of you would have heard about it, interstate dispute is the Kaveri water dispute. It is between Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, right? So there was a whole Kaveri river tribunal was established, and last year only, like recently, It has finally been resolved by the Honorable Supreme Court. And basically there was, so that is high the reason for various river water conflicts as well. Our population, that it is a scarce resource and we are polluting it continuously, or we are over exploiting it. So these are the major conflicts that arise out of water. So how can we conserve water? We have already discussed about it. Now when we talk about the various natural resources, when we talk about the non-renewable resources, so non-renewable natural resources are coal, petroleum, and natural gas. This is just a picture which is showing it. So basically when we talk about coal, guys, coal is something, I would tell you something about it. Coal is also known as it is also a type of sedimentary rock. Okay, so some information I guess you would have not been knowing about it. And the other thing is, coal is formed by the fossil fuel of plants, specifically pteridophytes, right? And majorly we have 4 types of coal: anthracite, bituminous, lignite, and peat. Basically, right? So these are the 4 types of coal. And may say anthracite and bituminous are hard coal, and lignite and peat are soft coal, and they are the good quality coal. Best type of coal is anthracite, which is coking grade coal. It is used in metallurgy, and basically it is formed by hundreds of thousands of years, after hundreds and thousands of years, right? So basically, as we know that the limitations of the fossil fuels itself is now non-renewable resources itself is the limited supply and the pollution that it causes, right? The fossil fuel ke case mein ye ho gaya coal. A little bit of, I'll also tell you about the petroleum. So petroleum is also a fossil fuel, but it is not a fossil of plants. Petroleum is formed by the fossilization of marine animals. Okay, so, and along with that, wherever you will find petroleum, you will also find natural gas. Natural gas always comes together. There will be they will exist together, right? Natural oil and natural gas. So as you see that it is said that why are we worried about these? So these are the resources. This is the limitation there, that they have limited supply, because their regeneration time is hundreds and thousands of years. Obviously, it takes form of fossil, right? Fossilization takes hundreds and thousands of years to make that fuel. So basically we have a limited reserve, and we have to use it judiciously, otherwise we will run out of it. And the other thing that we talk about fossil fuels, the other problem is pollution. We know that for all our industrialization we are dependent on coal. For our vehicles transportation sector we are dependent on basically petroleum. Petroleum is a crude oil. When it is subjected to fractional distillation, then we get various factors like gasoline, kerosene, jet oil, diesel oil, right? Petroleum jelly, then lubricants. All of these are the fractions that we get from the petroleum, right? So that is why all of you would have heard everywhere everyone wants to have be the master, because OPEC nations that have resources, okay, so they are the rich ones. So everyone wants to have. Recently aapne dekha hoga ki there was there are huge conflicts over it. So natural gas, and what is natural gas? Basically natural gas is a mixture of various gases. It is also present along with the petroleum, and ये जो cylinder बना है, it's so basically methane, ethane, propane, butane, a lot of gases which are present there. The natural gas itself majorly has. So basically all of you would have heard about, we extract natural gas from the resource, but after that gas is further divided. Basically various fractions are being taken and used for different purposes. Like all of you would have heard that gasoline is the scientific name of petrol. Gasoline causes pollution, but CNG is known as healthier or for environment, means it is known as green fuel. Why? Majorly CNG, almost 90%, more than 90% composition of CNG is methane, and slightly ethane gas is also present in it. So that does not produce hydrocarbons, unburnt hydrocarbons, which are the basically pollutants that are being released by it. उसके अलावा जो cylinder होता है guys, that liquefied petroleum gas, the picture that you are seeing here, it is a mixture of propane and butane. Okay, so natural gas, the cylinder that we use, it is a mixture of propane and butane. And let me tell you one more thing: natural gas is odorless, right, colorless gas. So to detect this leakage, methyl mercaptan and ethyl mercaptan or thiophene is being added to it to just straight, to just track its leakage, because it's highly inflammable. So that's why it is also hazardous. So basically fossil fuels, we are dependent, our life is dependent on the fossil fuels, and because they have the limited supply and we are running out of it. So that's why with the concept of natural resource management, after when the concept of sustainable development came, then we talked in 1972 with the first conference that was on natural, human and environment, United Nations Conference on Human and Environment, that for the first time talk about searching for alternatives of alternative sources of energy. So that led to because when we got to know that yes, we are running out of it, or next world war पानी पे होगी, पानी से पहले fossil fuel पे हो जाएगी, because we're not giving importance to it right now, and it is so right. So that's why these are important, and that's why we got this concept of natural resource management also, when we got to know that these resources, we might run out of these natural resources. So the other non-renewable natural resources, the minerals. What are minerals? Minerals are the naturally occurring inorganic crystalline solids which have a definite chemical composition and characteristic physical properties. So the minerals hote hain, these are the examples. Like, where do we get minerals from? We get minerals from the earth, right? Through mining we get minerals, and these minerals can be metals and non-metals. Metals, आपने non-metals में क्या? Like graphite, right? Diamond. These are the non-metals. And metals, gold, copper, aluminium, right? So there are so many minerals that we have. So these minerals, so when I'm taking the names of these minerals in our day-to-day life, we are dependent on these minerals as well. Okay, it's not like we're not dependent. And basically these minerals are found in rocks. We take them from the rocks when these are being mined. So so that is why, because, and so similarly these minerals also take a long time to regenerate, so it's also a limited supply. So one of the strategic mineral that we can say is uranium. So whenever we talk about the alternative sources of energy, all of you would have heard about the nuclear energy. Yes, nuclear energy is an alternative source of energy, but it is not a renewable resource, because nuclear energy requires uranium, right? Uranium is a mineral, and minerals are non-renewable resource. Only the thing is, the amount of energy produced by 1 gram of uranium is much, much more as compared to the amount of energy produced by 2.5 tons of coal and around 5.6 barrels of petroleum. The amount of energy produced by 1 gram of uranium is equal to that. So that's why we are looking for, or we use or talk about nuclear energy as an alternative source of energy. So why we have to protect them? Because in our day-to-day life, say in the iron, the vehicles that we use, the infrastructures, the fans, the furnitures, everywhere in our day-to-day life, the medicines, everywhere we require metals, we require minerals. So that is why these should also be conserved. So this was the overview of the natural resources that we have. Now let's talk about the natural resource management. So when we talk about, so this concept of natural resource management came As I've already told you, in United Nations Conference on Human and Environment, it was the first conference, or it occurred in Sweden, Stockholm. It is also known as Stockholm Conference, right? So it was the first time when the nature was talked about. Before that, it was economic development everywhere. So there, when United Nations found out that yes, we are over exploiting, there is a lot of pollution everywhere, we are over exploiting the natural resources, then something should be done. So in that Stockholm conference in 1972, first of all, the natural resource management was talked about. Okay, so basically now let's have a look what natural resource management is. Basically, this concept was started in the late 19th century with some conservation programs in the North American rangeland. So a bit about natural resource management started, and more after than this 1972 conference, or talked about, a lot was talked about the natural resource management. So now let's have a look what is it. So as the name suggests, natural resource management is the management of the natural resources with a particular focus on how management affects the quality of life for both present and future generations. Okay. So basically, more or less, it is also the sustainable use of the resources, right? Because we knew that we have a limited supply of many resources. If there will not be ubiquitous use, we will run out of it. Okay. So now, why are we talking about the natural resource management, and what is its significance? So first of all, if there would be the proper management of the natural resources, it will help us in maintaining the balance in the ecosystem. And I have already discussed about how important is the balance in the ecosystem, right? The other thing is to avoid the further destruction. Okay, whatever destruction we have already done, we can still avoid it. So to avoid it, this is required. And the other thing is to avoid overconsumption of natural resources. We are still doing, when yes, we are saying we're everywhere, we are talking about, we are doing the natural resource management, we are talking about it, we are doing it, but actually it is not there. We are not very much serious, or we are not religiously following it. Or we can say that there is lack of awareness. So whenever we talk about the natural resource management, so there are, as I have talked about the stakeholders to you in the forest. So whenever we talk about the natural resource management, the type and kind of stakeholders that we are dealing with, or is very important. So on the basis of the kind and type of stakeholders, the natural resource management approaches are broadly of 4 types, right? The first approach is the state property regime. So state property regime means the property which is owned by the state, okay, where there is some owner, the owner of the property is a state, like national parks, biosphere reserves, or wildlife sanctuaries. These are the in situ conservation strategies of the biodiversity. The next type of approach is non-property regime. So here non-property regime means, guys, there are a few resources which have open access for all, like nobody owned it, which are not owned by anybody. So which is like, for example, lake fisheries. Lake hai, so like everyone can go for the fishing there. Nobody is going to stop here. So ऐसी चीजों में what happens which are not, where there is no owner, what happens there? Their over exploitation resources happen. Third one is the private property regime. It is, for example, a land owned by a private person. Like if I would be having a forest part, or local garden or orchard of some fruit, apple orchard or something, so I will take care of it. I will do its protection. But problem happens with the things where there is no one, property which is not owned by anyone, like the lake fishery. The other thing is the fourth approach, that is the common property regime. Common property regime says, for example, the land which is owned by a group of people. So group of people, like community forests in a neighborhood village, like for example, as I have talked about, the Kuldevi and Kuldevta concept in India. So basically, guys, in Haryana also there is some community forests there. So community forest means there is a species of a tree which are being worshipped by the community which is living there. So that is also known as sacred groves, you would have heard about. So now these sacred groves are also a very good tool for the in situ conservation, right? Practice. Sacred groves means which is considered sacred by a group of people. So that group of people can do anything. They can sacrifice their life for the conservation of that resource. So these are how these four approaches on the base of stakeholders. Because as I have told you, public plays a very important role in or community participation is very much important in the natural resource management. Unless and until the participation will not be there, this management will not be successful. So this community forest, there are many examples from Nepal, Indonesia, etc., where this incorporation of the local communities which are living there, we have very successful examples there in the conservation of forest resources. So this is a very good approach. So these are the various approaches that are being used in the conservation. Now, when we talk about the natural resource, this thing becomes very important. Guys, initially there were 3 R's you must have heard about. So now those 3 R's are no more 3, they have become 5 R's. So basically it's about, as you know that we have discussed, we are dependent on our natural resources for everything, for food, fodder, clothes, paper, medicines, everything, raw materials, everything. So basically the 5 R's of waste management that are being talked about, so basically that are also a very important part of integrated natural resource management, because until and unless there will not be sustainable use of the resources, no resources will be left. So these 5 R's say, and I think and I want all of us to should incorporate this in our day-to-day life. Guys, by making a very small changes in our day-to-day life, we can make a big difference. You can think, I'm just an undergraduate student or I'm just a postgraduate student, what can I do alone? But every drop counts, every effort counts. So if we will keep on doing, at least if we will try to follow these 5 R's in our life, we will make a huge change. It will count. So now what happens, let's have a look at these 5 R's. So 5 R's, first of all, I'll take refuse. So what refuse says, refuse means if something is not required by you, or if something is not very much needed by you, if you do not have need of anything, do not use it. Try to refuse it. Sometimes we just see something and we buy it. Even the production of a pencil or a spoon, and till the time it reaches you, it takes a lot of time, right? See, you can it is said that you can just go and wash one steel spoon or reusable spoon and eat it. In place of that, if you take a reusable disposable spoon, it will waste a lot of resources, because उस spoon को बनाने में बहुत resource लगे हैं, then in its packaging, then its transportation, and also use the fossil fuels, then it has led to you, reached you. So that actually किसी भी resource को बनाने में there are a lot of resources that are being used and that are being wasted. So until and unless, try to refuse things you do not require. उसके बाद क्या होता है, we can reduce our consumption. For example, if I used to buy a disposable water bottle every day, I will try not to buy it. I'll try to take something like a reusable water bottle with me instead of buying a disposable water bottle every day. I can anytime reduce my consumption, right? So, or until unless it's not very much required, I would not buy a bottle. So basically, try to reduce consumption. At least you are not, if you are not at all zeroing it, at least you are reducing it. So that will provide reduce the pressure that are there on the natural resources. After that, reuse the things that we can use over and over again. We can use, like I just said, take a water bottle, not to buy a bottle from a market everywhere. Take a water bottle, steel water bottle, that would be healthier, and try to use it again and over again. Try to reuse it. You will not to buy. So when there will be no demand in the market, the production will also low down itself. So demand and supply with this direct relation. If there will be less demand, तो supply भी कम होगी, right? After that, what we can do? Recycle the things that we can, right? Like papers recycling hoti hai. So basically for the recycling, so for using these 5 hours, we have to do the waste segregation. Proper segregation should be there. So basically the things that can be recycled, we should allow them to recycle, right? After that, repurpose means if we can change the form of a thing and use in some other form. Like for example, if I have organic waste, if I will allow it to rot, it will then give me another energy form. It will give me compost. It will give, then I can use that compost in my garden or in my kitchen garden, right? Or we can say that, for example, the e-waste, for example. For e-waste, अगर हम ऐसे ही फेंक देते हैं phone, or do you know that, all of you must be knowing it, you are studying these things, you are educated people, that a phone or a computer has a lot of metals also in it. So as I've already told you, these are also non-renewable resource. We have a limited supply. So basically, sometimes if the phone or a laptop or a computer is not working, its many parts are still workable. So, or if those parts are also not workable, those metals can easily be extracted from it and can be reused, repurposed. After repurposing, they can be used in some other thing. So these are the 5 hours. If these hours will follow in our life, we will reduce a lot of pressure on the natural resources. Now, okay, so we have various types of, like, so that is how we can do the proper judicious management of the natural resources as well. But in the proper natural resource management, there are various threats which actually stops us from achieving the goals. You can say that. Some of the various threats are, first one is the developmental pressure on the natural resource base, right? So basically, yes, we try to conserve the natural resources, but there is a lot of developmental pressure. We try to conserve the resources, but we have more energy demands. So more energy demands require formation of more and more dams. And you know that when dams are being built, a lot of biodiversity is being lost. A lot of biodiversity is being lost from that place, including the flora and fauna, right? One such example is Narmada Bachao Andolan, which held for the Sardar Sarovar Dam, right? Now it was inaugurated by our honorable PM. And now you can say that it is the longest going movement that went on. Why? Because it actually inundated around 1 lakh hectares of land and 56,000 hectares of forest land in 3 states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, and Madhya Pradesh. Okay, so that actually led to that. After that, so basically developmental pressure actually allows that. Or the other thing is the encroachment of natural resources. So all these things, why are these things happening? Because of the lack of awareness. So that is why the awareness is something which is very much required. After that, we can say that over-exploitation of the natural resources is also, yes, we are doing the management, but still people are there who are over-exploiting it. So when the over-exploitation is there, we will not be able to succeed in our attempt to do the natural resource management. The other thing is human-induced disasters, which are causing a stress on natural resources. So human-induced disasters, as you can say that, as we have discussed, the forest fires that are actually sometimes that happened in Uttarakhand also saw this. Actually the people try to clear the forest. That's because of shifting cultivation. Sometimes those fires aggravate and it becomes very much difficult to control them. The other thing is, guys, the floods in Kerala that we saw. Those floods, basically, the first time when the floods came, a lot was discussed, a lot was talked about it, that those floods were human induced because of the developmental pressure, or to meeting the energy requirement of the industries. The water level of dams were above what should be there. They were already 3/4 filled. So when there were torrential rains for continuous 4-5 days, it actually led them to opening of all the gates. At the same time, that leads to the that led to the you all of us have seen such aggravated floods. The other thing is the forest cover of Western Ghats is continuously decreasing heavily. So forests also control the floods, though that factor was also not there. So these are the reasons. The other thing is political and policy issues. So political and policy issues are there. There are policies, but there are various limitations in the policies. So when we talk about the policies in India, right from the 1972 conference, when the conservation of wildlife was taken as one of the point which were discussed there. So that time, guys, India started with its one of its first act, which was Wildlife Protection Act. So I will not talk in detail about it because in one of your previous classes in biodiversity, you have already it was already discussed. So I will not tell much about it. You know the highlights of it. So basically, in 1972, the Wildlife Protection Act came into force, which led to the development of the national parks. Various projects started. India started this doing the census of its wildlife, the various species which are endangered, which are critically endangered. Hunting, poaching was banned. These were the things, and it was more of a prohibitory kind of an act because these things were prohibited. Then in 1980 came in Forest Conservation Act. So Forest Conservation Act was more like a regulatory kind of an act. So it was regulatory because forest cutting was not totally banned. It was like with the permission of the government, the clearance can happen for the developmental projects. And it is also being discussed in your previous class. So I will not go into details. After that, in 90, so I am just giving you an overview. Yes, the policies are there, but a strict implementation is required, right? So after that, in 1981, we had Prevention and Control of Air Pollution Act. Before that, we had in 1974 Water Pollution Act. The Water Act, or it is also known as Prevention and Control of Water Pollution Act. So basically, when our water, we were not worried about the water at all. When our water started getting polluted and it was clearly visible. So in 1974, an act came, which also led to the establishment of current Central Pollution Control Board that we have. Actually, there was Pollution Control Board that time, and later on it rechristened into the Central Pollution Control Board of today. After that, in 80s, we have Prevention and Control of Pollution Act in 1981, which also, yes, by 1980s, our air started getting so much polluted. So the act came into force. And after, in 1987, noise pollution also added to it as a part of Air Pollution Act. Noise pollution also became part of air pollution. Guys, so these were the major acts or policies that were there. But still, a lot of things were not covered by this. So basically, we had after the Bhopal tragedy in 1984, because that was what? Leakage of hazardous waste. That was hazardous waste. There was no rule on soil pollution, right? There were different pollution acts which were covering different types of pollutions, but still many things were left. So after this Bhopal tragedy in 84, in 1986, a very comprehensive act came into force in 1986. That was Environment Protection Act. It is also known as an umbrella act. So all these acts now went into under the Environment Protection Act. So then the soil pollution, which was not being touched, or the hazardous waste management, that also came under it, or coastal zone regulations, that also. So everything now, the biodiversity, everything, all those acts were being made. Now they all come under the Environment Protection Act. So basically, that was more comprehensive main act, which was actually controlling all of the natural resources. So now here I would like to talk a bit about now the history now, I will try to connect. So this was the natural resource management. So these were the policy issues were there. So but still some, you can say that strict implementation or stringent rules were not there that actually lead somewhere. So basically, when, as I have already discussed, this concept of natural resource management started much earlier, but still it was seen that we were not able, we were not successful in conserving the resources. The exploitation was continuous, the pollution was continuous. We were not successful in taking, achieving what we started. So in 1983, when UN saw there is no, even after the Stockholm conference, a lot of agendas were given. We will do this, we will stop, conserve resources, and all resource management would be there. There was no success. So in 1983, UN Secretary thought that United Nations General Assembly thought of making a separate, some commission, some association, or some body that will actually focus on the environmental developmental problems, and which will so that is why in 1983 a new organization came into place, the Brundtland Commission. You would have heard about it. So the Brundtland Commission was also known as World Commission on Environment and Development. So its head was being made ex-Norwegian PM Gro Harlem Brundtland was made the head of this because of extensive knowledge that she possessed. And so that Brundtland Commission, guys, was the starting point, right, of today's sustainable development. So that actually started because when we talk about the sustainable development, it is actually, what is sustainable development? Sustainable development is the ubiquitous use of natural resources. So from the natural resource, sustainable use of natural resources is what sustainable development is. Keep on doing the development, keeping in mind the judicious use of natural resources, right? Do the development, but don't try to exploit the resources, because there is a saying that we are not the masters of this planet, we are just the caretakers. We have to pass on this legacy to our future generations. So we have to judiciously use that. So don't make our children say that we have not left anything for them. So basically, sustainable development itself says ubiquitous use of natural resources, so that, or we can say that there is ubiquitous use, so which will let its use in a way it will not we will not over exploit it. So the development and or environment should go hand in hand. Basically, this is the theme, or this is the meaning of the sustainable development. So basically, the concept started with the Brundtland Commission when UN established it. That they tried to establish a separate body in 1983, which would focus on. So basically, the aim of this Brundtland Commission was to create united international community with shared sustainability goals, right? Which, by how could they do it? By identifying the sustainability problems, like what are the problems which are hindering our path towards the sustainability, right, worldwide. So how it could be done? By raising the awareness, because yes, for one conference was held in 1972, but not a lot was talked about it. The awareness among the people was not that, yes, we may run out of our natural resources. What will we do then? Right. So it was the one of the major aim was by raising the environmental awareness about the conservation of natural resources, and by suggesting the solutions. Right. So that was the aim of the Brundtland Commission. So after extensive work in 1987, Brundtland Commission came out its comprehensive report, you can say, which is known as Our Common Future. Our Common Future came in 1987, right? So Our Common Future actually told us, it had a comprehensive elaborated discussion about what are the requirements, how can we do it, what are the problems, how can we reach sustainability. And it paved the way actually for, strongly paved the way for the first summit which was held on sustainable development, specifically, which was also known as Earth Summit, held in Rio de Janeiro in 1992. So, as you know that this Rio Summit or Earth Summit is also known as 1992 is the first uh, conference. It is also known as United Nations Conference on Environment and Development, right? So it was the first conference where majorly the agenda was the sustainable development. So UNCED started or actually discussed a lot of burning problems that we were facing by then. Like by then, we knew that greenhouse gases are increasing which at a very rapid rate. Ozone hole was already discovered over Antarctica. So these all things were there. And the biodiversity, the importance of the biodiversity was also known. So these all things were known, and this was the first, conferences where various topics were discussed, like the various issues that were discussed, which were left untouched before, like radioactive waste. Here, poisonous waste, hazardous waste, handling was also talked about. Lead in gasoline, this was talked about. Then basically alternative uses of energy, alternative sources of uses of alternative sources of energy was also discussed in Earth Summit, Rio de Janeiro or UNCED in detail. Then the scarcity, the upcoming scarcity of water was discussed. So basically the topics which were already left out, which was always used to left out, was discussed. It was the first comprehensive summit. So basically guys, the out of after this conference, there was a Rio Declaration that was discussed about. So Rio Declaration also was the dialogue or that came out of this conference. Before that, I want to tell you this conference was very much successful in actually talking about or handling the various topics which were there, like Kyoto Protocol. Basically, this actually Kyoto Protocol or United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. Actually, this is an important achievement of this conference which was there. UNFCCC के बारे में discussion was there. It paved the path for it, which led to the Kyoto Protocol, right? And for the Paris Agreement on climate change. So these are the comprehensive talks for controlling the climate change. Then the Convention on Biodiversity, it has already been discussed. I will not discuss here about it. So Convention on Biodiversity was also opened for signature in this conference also. And then UN Convention to Combat Desertification. So basically a lot of environmental problems were discussed here in this summit, Earth Summit. So basically, and various environmental laws were also being made. Specifically, the international environmental law was first of all discussed in 1972 Stockholm Convention. So where whatever being left, and that is Stockholm Convention, guys, which actually led to further all these things was the first convention where that is also known as Stockholm Convention, persistent organic pollutants. Persistent organic pollutants. In the inaugural lecture, all of you would have heard about the DDT. So DDT was the first synthetic pesticide, and it was during the Second World War. It was heavily used. It was very effective in vector control, malaria and typhus for the soldiers during the Second World War. So like agriculture industry clamored for it. So everywhere there was everywhere it was used, and it was used in powdered form. If you would see the pictures, they used to, for killing the lice, they used to, the powder is being sprayed over the head, And actually that also led to the lowering the population of the bald eagle in US. The bald eagle is a national bird as well as national animal of US. So basically then that Rachel Carson, the book of Rachel Carson actually led to that, paved the path for 72 summit. And then from there, when there was no development, then Brundtland Commission was established. It was a comprehensive, it gave a comprehensive plan. Then the Earth Summit came into force. When Earth Summit, and it was also decided that every 10 years, we will do an overview of what we did. So after the Earth Summit in 1992, there was another Earth Summit which was held in Johannesburg in 2002. That summit is known as Rio Plus 10. Right. So Rio Plus 10 also had a lot of various agreements, like it also talked, it's basically overviewed like the agendas that were there, whether we have overcame or not, and it has kept alive the whether we are working on the sustainable development goals that we have for it. So basically the agreements that major agreements that came out of Rio Plus 10 was to restore the world's depleted fisheries in 2015. Okay, after that, after 10 years, as till now we have not reached 2020. So in 2012, another Rio Plus 20, another sustainable development conference, you can say, and it was the conference, United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development, which was held, or it is also known as Rio Plus 20. It was again held in Rio de Janeiro. So this also, and this was one comprehensive conference which was on the sustainable development, and it gave out a political outcome document, like a document like what we have, like what are the, how are we, where are we in reaching the sustainable, it gave out all the sustainable development goals that we have, and the governments agree to strengthen it. Then in Rio Plus 20 conference is a very important conference in a way that it helped in galvanizing the attention of the thousands of representatives. And it was the first conference where a lot of NGOs were also a part, a number of volunteers were there outside the UN systems. So in a way, this conference actually led to the formation of a new partnership to advance the sustainable development. As you know that, as we have already discussed, as we have already discussed, that sustainable development or the natural resource management, these are participatory kind of things. We cannot fulfill it, or we cannot do it without the community participation. So unless and until community participation is not there, we will not be successful in conserving the natural resources or conserving the biodiversity that is there. So in detail, sustainability will also be discussed in our further lectures. So this is what, and why are we worried about the sustainable development, guys? One example I want to give you in the end, that the current pandemic that you are seeing. So there are a lot of viruses. A lot of viruses exist in nature, and they have their host wildlife. Those host wildlife there. So when the indiscriminate cutting of forest, killing of wildlife for their poaching, for their body parts, that actually, when we are going close to them, that are exposing us to the deadly viruses that we are seeing, the COVID-19 crisis today. So and there is still much left to be done. So I want to leave you here with a thinking note, and we'll be covering the sustainable development, sustainability more, and renewable resources, energy resources in detail in the further lectures. I want to leave you here with a thought or with a question, and I will ask you further that what should we do? Is it enough? And what can we further do for that resource conservation? So I want to show you a video. It will be a 2-minute video that will help you think. I just want to leave you with a thought that will give you the thought. Just wait A second, I'll share. या COVID-19 खोल लेते हैं.
Dear humankind,
हो ही नहीं रहा. Am I audible?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay, tell me if the volume is there or not. I'm just sharing my screen. Is it visible? My screen is visible to you?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay.
dear humankind, thank you for being a superhost. I never imagined I'd have the opportunity to jump to a species as abundant as you. Most viruses only get to know their original host animal. Many exist entirely in the humid understory of a remote rainforest. We viruses are kept in check by healthy environments with diverse and abundant wildlife. But when you rip forests apart and capture billions of animals to feed your insatiable appetite for flesh and false cures, you bring viruses like me out of our natural quarantines. You introduce us to new hosts, like you. A superhost of 8 billion individuals and counting. A walking, flying, swimming human meat market. You make up a third of all mammals on Earth by weight. The animals you grow to feed yourselves outweigh all the wild mammals and birds on the planet. As you drive our natural wildlife hosts to extinction, you throw us life rafts bigger than the Titanic. Why wouldn't I jump? As sinister as I may seem, it is not in my interest to wipe out my hosts. We all need other life to thrive. So if this sickness in your bodies opens your eyes to the deeper sickness in our shared planet, it will be to all our benefit. But my big question to you is this: am I enough? If apocalyptic fires aren't enough, if vanishing glaciers aren't enough, if super hurricanes aren't enough, is the cold shadow I cast across the lives of you and your loved ones enough for you to finally confront the prospect of your own extinction? Only you, humankind, can choose to be the cure for the deeper sickness. Only you can choose to nurture the ancient oceans, forests, and grasslands that nurture you, to bring back the chorus of birds and monkeys to silent rainforests, and to make wise choices every day in what you consume and how you live. By protecting nature in all its wild and wonderful forms, you protect yourselves. As the earth stops to take a collective deep breath, you have a rare opportunity to reimagine and redefine a new future. So tell me, what future do you choose?
So what future do you choose? It's up to you. I'll leave you with this question. So now I think the house is open for questions. The house is open for questions. You may ask whatever your doubts are from the session. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Excuse
So
me.
if you have any question, you can type in the chat box, guys. हाँ जी बोलिए.
Ma'am, I have a doubt.
हाँ बोलो.
So, development. So, how we can make positive cost between the development and the environment? Because in certain times we see that the development is actually important, like the building of the dams is particularly more important for the construction of the electricity and for the many other purposes. But at the same point of time, we are seeing that it will going to be a threat for the environment. Then we are seeing that the metro plays a very important role in the metropolitan cities.
Priya, hi Priya. Can you type? Actually, your voice is not very clear. Can you type your question?
All right, ma'am. Okay.
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
I could understand it was related to something dams, but it's not very clearly. In the meantime, others can also type you doubts. You can type in the chat box and we'll discuss it. No doubt. That was something related to dams. Okay, you type your question. Meanwhile, I'll discuss something about the dams. So basically, yes, dams are for the development, definitely. But actually, excess, excess of anything is bad, right? So, jo dams, whenever we make dams, there are a lot of ecological effects also. There are upstream effects, there are downstream effects whenever we do a development. So for that, basically for that, I have not discussed, it would have been very much in detail. There is something called environment impact assessment that is there, right, for the major developmental projects. But that actually tells what are the major before commissioning or before starting any developmental projects. Environment impact assessment is done. Like if we will commission a project, how much, what will be the cost? Basically, it's a cost benefit analysis, right? Like how much cost it will incur and how much benefits we will get out of it. So that is something we have. So, but it is not being done nicely because when a dam is made, a lot of things can occur. Huge amount of biodiversity is being actually okay. I'll talk about her question, then I'll talk. I think it's about how can we develop an idea to choose between development and environment. Like at one point, dams are important, metros are important, but at the same time, they have some negative consequences as well. So how can we? So that is why the concept of sustainable development is there, right? The concept of sustainable development, there is a holistic approach is of taking environment and development together. That's what I was talking about, the environment impact assessment. Initially it was not mandatory in India. In 70s it was opted by the US. Then World Bank started saying that there is not all of you must be knowing about it, environment impact assessment of a developmental project on an environment. Okay, so that's what I was discussing about it, like dams, minings, right? Highways. So basically these are the things which can incur huge impact on the environment. So we should try to do the development, but there should not be over exploitation of the resources. For example, जब dam बनाते हैं, तो there are a lot of things that are being seen there. First of all, one major important thing I want to talk about it, because that is the 99 year of seismic data is being seen. Seismic data आप समझते हो? और seismic means earthquake intensity. Like 99 years में कितने अर्थक्वेक उस एरिया में आए और वो उसके बारे में बात की जाती है. आफ्टर दैट इट्स बीइंग टॉक्ड दैट लाइक इफ हाउ मच जो बायोडाइवर्सिटी, द फॉरेस्ट और द वाइल्ड लाइफ दैट विल बी लॉस्ट, तो उसका जो हमारी प्राइसिंग है, तो दैट विल जो कॉस्ट लगेगी एंड प्लस द मॉनेटरी कॉस्ट, that be more than or less than the profit that we will incur out of it. So these all things are there. So in सबको देख के अगर हम hand in hand जाएंगे, that's what the sustainable development is all about. We should not, metros are important, dams are important, should be there, but over excess of anything is bad. That should not be done. So that is how things are. We should not do it like that. कि सिर्फ डेवलपमेंट कर रहे हैं, सिर्फ पेड़ काट रहे हैं. Like there was a lot of talk about the draft EIA that we have this in 2020, draft EIA 2020, right? Because उसमें बहुत सारी चीजें हटा दी हैं, right? ऐसे ही नहीं करते हैं, analysis होती है, what can be the impact of commissioning that project over that area, and will it break it, क्योंकि अगर कहीं earthquake आ जाता है तो earthquake, आपको पता है earthquake can in the Tehri Dam, it's so huge, it is said that if an earthquake will come and if it will get broken, so in few hours the water, like most part of Delhi will also be inundated underwater. So basically that's why. So the resources, we should go hand in hand with the natural resources. So basically this was just an overview of the natural resources and how should we go with the management of the natural resources and the sustainable development. Right, this is something, so this was an overview. In the further lectures we will be having a particular topic wise lectures. The next lecture is going to be tomorrow, it's scheduled for tomorrow at the same time, on renewable energy resources and our future. Yes, ma'am, when we talk about renewable energy, solar energy, wind energy, both are Neha Kaushik. Ma'am, when we talk about renewable energy, solar energy and wind energy, both are renewable, but both have their negative impacts, like both produce a lot of non-recyclable solid waste. How to tackle both the problems? Yes. So renewable solar and wind. Yes. So she has asked a very good question. That is more, about the solar energy. This is something which we are talking about after the International Solar Alliance, and a lot is being, when we are investing a lot on the solar energy, National Solar Mission, where we have to reach the 100 gigawatt capacity. That's something I have discussed also. We are right now not, initially that thing happened with the development also. We just, when we see something, we just run over it. We are not looking at the negative impact. So basically the solar energy that you are talking about, wind energy, basically इसको हम otherwise भी कहते हैं cleanest source of energy. इसमें इतने ज़्यादा, you can recycle the products or you can use it in other forms also. But in case of solar energy, what we are using, the solar cells, silicon, the solar cells or wafers that we are using it produces heavy metal. It has arsenic in it. It produces basically a lot of research is being going on it, and all of you must have heard about the most preferable way right now we are using is the solar cell. But there are other methods also for tapping the solar energy, जैसे कि solar troughs, parabolic dishes. उसमें क्या होता है, right? There are other ways also. So a lot of research is being going on right now to harness the solar energy some other way, by harnessing the heat of that energy, like solar troughs या parabolic dishes. इनमें क्या होता है, a liquid is being heated with the help of the solar energy. फिर उससे we try to produce an electricity. So such kind of researches are required. You have raised a very good question. This is also recently there is an article by a scientist who was saying we are investing a lot on the solar energy without actually, because the life of a solar cell is 25 to 30 years. So what will happen? We are investing huge amount now. What will happen? We are going to see a lot of waste. So one thing to deal about that is we should look out for other sources, like other sources of tapping the heat, like solar troughs, parabolic dishes that we have that are there, and some other means to trap the heat of the sun to produce the energy, rather than this silicon cell or wafers process. So that is what we are talking about, that we can do it to tackle this. Any other question? See, देखो, there are two different things. So when we talk about total ocean, total अगर आप देखोगे ना, so basically we have a huge amount, 3/4 of like land is covered with water. So जो हमारा ocean है, ocean में maximum sequestration इसलिए हो जाता है. अगर कहीं भी, like this is a very common question in the competitive exams as well, maximum carbon sequestration occurs by oceans. अगर हम देखेंगे ओपन इन एन ओपन ओशन, पर किलोमीटर स्क्वायर इज अ डिफरेंट थिंग, फिर वो नेचुरल रेन फॉरेस्ट का होता है पर किलोमीटर स्क्वायर, per unit area when we talk about. So in an open ocean, because the oceans have huge amount, so that's why it is ocean. Ma'am, are the forest dwellers really threat to forest dwellers? Are not forest dwellers. See, forest dwellers are not the exact threat are not the forest dwellers, they are the outsiders, the people, or all of you would have heard about the biosphere reserve, the concept of the biosphere reserve, right? So biosphere reserve it was started by the UNESCO under the man and biosphere program. So basically it is just an extension of a national park. Here the people idea was to incorporate the people with the biosphere reserves. Okay, so they live, the forest dwellers or the villages that they live there, they live in harmony with the nature. They are not the biggest threat. Biggest threat is the industries or the industrial development that is being there. Shifting cultivation is also something we should look after. So it's a biggest threat. They are not even the, you know, the tribes or the local communities are the ones which play a very important role in conserving the natural resources. Like you can say that the people which would be living there, they must be having some community forest or the sacred groves. So they play a very dominant role in conserving. And if right, you know, they will be aware in a right manner by the government or some agencies, so we would be able to attain a better natural resource management that way. And India is one of the major producer. Neha Kaushik is saying India is one of the major producer of solid waste with comparatively less space to dispose it of. Yes, less space. हमारे पास actually we are population में we are the most populous, or land is very less. So the concept of landfills, actually the proper disposal of waste management is the landfill. तो वो land mountains है, as you can see in Delhi. और आपको जान के बहुत ही खुशी दुख होगा, लेटेस्ट वी गॉट टू नो दैट जो गाजीपुर वाली लैंडफिल है वो कुतुब मीनार के बराबर पहुंचने वाली है, पहुंच चुके ऑलमोस्ट. सो आप समझ सकते हैं, इवन इफ आफ्टर दैट व्हेन वी सॉ ह्यूज एक्सीडेंट्स, राइट? सो proper waste management we will cover in the last theme, guys. So if you have any other question you can ask me. Still 2 minutes are left. See, integrated management should be there. Integrated management means incorporation of people also. So करते जो है वो बाहर वाले ही करते हैं. The local people are not the biggest threat. They live in harmony with nature. Or the tribes, they live in harmony with nature. That's all, guys. So thank you so much. That's all from my side. Okay. I will take the attendance here. Thank you so much. Is ad of ice, Narendra? Is ad of ice in oceans is help to sequestration?